This lecture is on sustainable wine growing. And so some of this is a little bit out of date, but that's okay because it's a moving target and there are a lot of players, and I want to give you the general concepts here. There are many different efforts in sustainability around the world, and wine is no different. It's partly ecological stewardship and being a good environmental steward of planet Earth. It's partly a marketing strategy to link the word sustainability with your brand. And there's a number of advantages, and a lot of companies like the benefits of being labeled as a sustainable company. And this is true around the world. So what is sustainability? It's a very broad concept without very much legal teeth to it. Nobody knows what sustainability really means. And there's been many efforts to define it. And the problem is there are lots of people who understand the concepts of sustainability. They can define it, they can talk about it, but until it has a consistent definition that has international consistency and legal definitions under the law where you know what it means, it's a difficult, challenging thing to talk about. So one of the most common ways of looking at sustainability is this concept of the triple bottom line, where you have economic viability, social responsibility, and it's environmentally sound. And I've heard it described as the 3 Ps, and maybe you can remember it this way. I think it's a great way to remember it. The 3 Ps: people, social responsibility; planet, environmentally sound; and profit. You can't do it without making money, economically viable. It makes no sense to run a business that you can't make money, not in a capitalistic world in which most of the world lives. And this concept of sustainability is the intersection of these 3 things. It's sustainable because you are taking care of the environment, the planet. It's sustainable because you are taking care of people and you have a happy workforce that is sustainable, and also people beyond, not just your workforce, but also in the entire industry, customers, everything else, the entire pipeline, and economically viable, profit. So there are different concepts. There are people who look at things as a linear progression or something, where you have conventional agriculture, the old way of looking at agriculture, integrated pest management, which in some areas has evolved into bio-intensive integrated pest management, which really looks at the biological systems of soil and environment within your crop. Organics, which is now a legally defined distinction of growing practices, and then biodynamic, which is kind of the ultimate extension of all of the above best practices, including organic. I would disagree a little bit. I think that conventional has a lot to offer. This linear progression looks like anything conventional is old-fashioned, outdated, and that's not really true. There's a lot of things conventional offers to the mix that is just as today, just as sustainable, just as important in the discussion as some of these more trendy words or legal words like organic, because that does have legal teeth. Everything else here doesn't have any legal teeth to it at all. And there's a very generic way of looking at this: an unsustainable production system to a sustainable production system to a truly organic and whatever comes after that. Again, these concepts are heavily weighted towards the organic community because they are seen as the real pushers of the sustainability concept. And again, I would kind of disagree with that. I agree that they are the driving force, but not the only force. So linear progression, this idea, this perspective of a linear progress is a narrow-minded viewpoint, and there is much more complexity in how all of these different pieces of the puzzle fit together. So we have sustainable agriculture, and there's organic agriculture, which is largely sustainable, but some of it's not. We also have integrated pest management practices, again, improving sustainability. We have the biodynamics, all of this. Now, again, this PowerPoint was produced by the sustainability group. Conventional isn't in here at all, but I would argue that conventional overlaps with all of this. There are many things in conventional agriculture that are organic, biodynamic, IPM, and sustainable. And there's a lot of conventional agriculture that falls outside of the organic and sustainable world as well. But again, it's a matter of tying these things together, and it is quite complex. So there's a lot of interest in sustainability. Certainly globally, there's a lot of challenges with environmental degradation. We have lost a tremendous amount of our world's insects and wildlife, and every category of life on Earth we have watched decline pretty dramatically in the last 100 years and accelerating in the last 50. Climate change, resource scarcity. Again, I'm not going to read the entire list, but a lot of things that go into these challenges globally. Growing involvement in sustainable development and sustainable agriculture among governments. If you talk about sustainability, it's one thing to do it in your company. It's another to do it across companies in California. And it really gets difficult when you start moving across international borders. How do you use language like sustainability and all the things that fall within this umbrella of sustainability and talk to people in Canada and Mexico and France and England and China and Australia and on and on and on. And we're all talking different ways and different things. So there are global efforts to try to bring the language together and make a more consistent international language of sustainability. Certainly there's also interest in sustainable businesses throughout, not just agriculture and the agricultural food chain, manufacturing, transportation, all the aspects of the food chain, but also in other areas and other industries. And many companies going green. So a lot of familiar brands that you might know, certainly Ben & Jerry's. If you know Ben & Jerry's ice cream, you know that they are definitely a sustainability company, but some you might not think so much. Ford, Toyota, Hewlett-Packard, Walmart, Dole. You know, you might not immediately think of these companies as big sustainability initiatives, but they do have huge sustainability initiatives in their ranks, in their programs, and what they're doing globally. So there's efforts by consumers, competition, and that goes back to consumers. If Starbucks is doing it, but Peet's Coffee isn't doing it, or Peet's Coffee is and Starbucks isn't, now all of a sudden who's stealing customers from who, and everybody wants to jump on board with the competition. Investors are seeing the value in companies and bringing money to sustainable companies. Employees want to work for companies where they enjoy and feel proud of the company, and they feel better. They have a longer job outlook, staying with companies that have a sustainable approach. Governments are pushing for sustainability, and also social and environmental challenges. So again, these are various efforts around the world, sustaining success in Australia, the New Zealand wine growing program. South Africa has the integrated production of wine system, etc. In the US, especially in California, we have the sustainable wine growing program. Again, what the status is on each of these, you'd have to look it up, but this has been a moving target for 20 years. And a lot of effort in this sustainability area. And I don't want to spend too much time looking at the Sustainable Success Strategy program. You can read through this on your own, just hit pause, but it's the kind of things you would expect. People are developing these collaborations within an industry, and in this case, specifically wine grape production and wine making, the enology and wine making portion of the industry coming together to create a better market, better consumer acceptance, and a better sales strategy, improve their markets. Again, not going to go through the details, hit pause on any of these or go through the PowerPoint on your own. These numbers are, some of them, very old, but that's okay. You know, these are numbers that date back, you know, here's a number 95 to 96, another number on the same page up at 2003. You're still talking pretty old numbers. It doesn't matter. The trends are continuing. These organizations are still here. And I don't think it has too much value for this class to look to know exactly what the numbers are. If you're interested in one of these, pull up their website, read what's going on with them. In New Zealand, they have a positive points system. That's something interesting that is really an interesting way that they do this. You have a scorecard, you self-assess, and you are ranked based on your sustainability activities within your organization. South Africa, European programs. In California, this is the regional programs, the Central Coast Vineyard Team or Viticulture Team. Can't remember the V is vineyard or viticulture. But again, they're different regional groups, and they have a code, I'll show you that in a minute, of sustainable practices, and you can get the code and read the manual, go through it. It's not a short, quick read or nothing you take into the bathroom with you. It's some serious, long, lengthy lists of to-dos and best practices for sustainability. But if you're doing this, it's a full-time job making your company sustainable and developing these practices. So here is the centerpiece, as they say, of these sustainable wine practices, and they update the pages. So you take out some pages from the binder. When they get updated, you put in new pages. But it's also available completely online now. If you want the paper version, I think it's still available, but I know that it's available online. From ground to glass, so growing all the way through the winemaking, through the distribution process, all the way into the consumer's hands. So there's every one of these pieces is part of these sustainability wine growing practices. And the most recent one, I don't know if there's been any categories added, but air quality is a more recent one, 14 years ago. There have certainly been changes, but I don't think any substantial changes in the major categories. So how does it work? You self-assess, you interpret your performance, you develop an action plan to improve, you implement the change, and then you start over. All right, we implemented some changes. Let's reassess. How are we doing? We assess our projects, we assess our production, we assess everything. We look for more opportunities for improving. We interpret how we're performing now and develop an action plan to get better. Implement those new changes, round and round we go. So you keep getting better. Once you're done getting better, you look at how you can get better again. So again, self-assessment numbers doesn't really matter here other than to show that the numbers have grown even back in the early parts of this, in the early 2000s, and they continue to grow. This is a very important area for the wine industry. And they also have education workshops for the growers and winemakers in the California regions, growing regions, and they talk about all sorts of different things. They're there to spread the word on what these practices are and how they can help you learn how to get better. It's not just California. Around the country, Washington, Oregon, New York, Penn State, Canadian Vintners Association, Wine Council of Ontario. So the last two are Canadian, but you know, California is the wine capital of the United States. All of these other areas are rather small postage stamps in comparison to California, but they're important pieces of the industry, especially Washington and Oregon, I think are pretty strong in their production, with New York being another important niche region. And I'm sure they're not the only states that have something like this. Certification and eco-label initiatives. So you can get certification with different kinds of ecological labels. So you get Food Alliance certified, salmon safe. These are things that, depending on your market, your interest, you can get these kinds of certifications that allow you to use their labeling and their stickers, their symbols on your advertising brochures, in your marketing materials, whatever you want to use them. And so this is part of the carrot to be involved in some of these programs, because a consumer sees something like this associated with your company. Oh, they're an ecologically friendly company. I like that. I'm going to choose their wine over the one that's sitting right next to it. Again, different kinds of certification initiatives related to wine growing. You can read through the details here. Part of the challenge, though, is where is their recognition of these? How do you determine if your customers can recognize and care about some of these things? How do you leverage it? And if there are too many initiatives spread too thin over too large an area, they don't work as well. So I think a lot of people are hoping over the long run that some of these sustainability certifications narrow down to things that are more consumer recognizable and powerful, like the symbol for organic produce. That's become really recognizable and important to a lot of consumers. If it's organic, it's certified organic by the federal government. You can use the organic label and people know what that means. When you have all of these tiny regional certifications, it's harder for you to leverage the value of them. What makes the sustainable winemaking practices unique and effective? Active participation by growers, comprehensive in scope, the fact that it is looking at the 3 Ps or the 3 Es. I learned it is the 3 Ps, people, profit, planet. And this one looks at the 3 Es, environmental, economic, and equity, or the people part. Building bridges between, between environmental and agricultural interests. It's a win-win solution. the rising tide raises all ships, as they say, and sustainability is one of those rising tides. And everybody who jumps on board properly and effectively and doesn't blindly just start throwing money around, everybody benefits. Innovative measurement system, so you can measure your performance and your improvements. And it's right there to report the results to the public. Look at how much we've improved. Certainly marketing, we've talked about marketing already, and setting a good example for not only your customers, but the industry as well. Hey, look, we're being responsible, sustainable. We're doing it right. So that is the sustainability initiatives. And I do want to also show you the wine growers workbook, excuse me. And you can see here it's a 427-page document. This is the 3rd edition. I haven't checked if there's a 4th edition. This was last put out in 2012. First one in 2002, then 2006, then 2012. So it's 6 years. They're about due, and there might be a 4th edition out there. I just didn't take an opportunity to look. But this is the Bible, the workbook for sustainable wine growing practices. And, you know, this is a tremendous value. And this is right on their website. If I go to their, shoot, that's in my way, just a second. Forbidden, they don't allow me to go directly in. Talks about the program. I'm just going to really quickly check. California Code Workbook site : sustainablewinegrowing.org. I misspelled California. That's okay. SWP Workbook. Sure enough, there's the 4th edition. So the code 4th edition, public comments request, Wine Growers Committee. Is it available for free download? That's what I don't know. 4th edition coming soon. It's open for comment. So it's not available. It says right here, 4th edition coming soon. And when that means, I don't know. So I'm going to ignore that right now. You know it's coming. 3rd edition, it was 2012, but it actually was publicly available in January 2013, and they have another one on its way. Here it is. Next month, 4th edition will be released in December 2020. So if this particular version looks cool to you, make yourself a note. With all the COVID stuff, maybe I'd make a note for January 2021 to look back on this website. And the website's really easy to find. It's this one right here, www.sustainablewinegrowing.org. Just go there and search for the workbook. And 4th edition coming soon.